Jeff and I absolutely love a good Cuban sandwich, but to make them from scratch can take some time, making the bread and then marinating the pork and all of those things that make a traditional Cuban sandwich. So I decided to put a twist on it, make a super easy, super fast Cuban, and it's absolutely delicious. Welcome to The Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. That's exactly what we're gonna do today, keep it super simple. We're gonna make a sandwich that is inspired by a Cuban sandwich, but let me just say right off the bat, this is not a traditional Cuban. So if you're expecting that, this is not going to please you. However, it is absolutely delicious, super easy to do, and takes no time at all. First thing we want to do is get the Ninja Foodi indoor grill or whatever air fryer you want to use preheated. And when you preheat, I recommend preheating with the basket in, or if you're using like the oven, the air fryer oven, put the tray in that you're going to cook on, then heat that surface too. It's really going to help get the browning that you want on this sandwich. All right, so turn this on. We're going to go to the air crisp setting, and we want to go to 375. And hit the start button. We'll let that preheat while we assemble our sandwich. Okay, so I read a ton about Cuban sandwiches, and boy, oh boy, is there some controversy and some contradictory feelings about a Cuban. But how I know and have enjoyed Cubans in the past is they have some sort of a pork, like a roasted pork, a marinated pork shoulder, or I've seen it with pork tenderloin or even pork loin. They have a cooked ham, some Swiss cheese, pickle, and some mustard. That is how I'm used to eating them. That's how we're gonna make it today. And it's absolutely delicious. But then I've heard that you don't use mustard, you use mayonnaise, a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. So I don't know what's absolutely technically correct or if there is a technically correct way to make it, and it doesn't matter. Make it the way you like it and make it delicious. That's the only thing that matters. All right, so I tried my hand at making bread, a Cuban bread, because we can't buy that around here, and it was really delicious, but it was very time consuming, and I just didn't feel like that was something that I wanted to do, on an ongoing basis every time I wanted a Cuban. So I decided that I'm gonna turn the Cuban into a grilled wrap. So I'm using a 10-inch flour tortilla, and we're gonna get that all dressed up and into the air crisper really soon. And I'm using the leftovers of a roasted pork that I made, which actually isn't roasted, I grilled it, honestly, in the indoor grill. And it has this rub that is, oh my gosh, fantastic. And I will definitely link to that recipe right up there for you guys so that you can pick that up. And I'll link to the written recipe in the video description so that you can make this. It takes 12 minutes in the grill and it's done, and it's so lovely. You need about 1.5 ounces of the pork for one sandwich. You can make as many as you'd like. You can probably fit, I would say 3 comfortably in the grill here. So I'm gonna just set that to the side. And then because it's gonna be a wrap, I felt like you don't want slices in there, although it would work. It'll be harder to roll, and when you go to bite the wrap, they're gonna like pull out in this big chunk. So didn't want that. So I decided I would kind of dice it up a little bit. So I'm just gonna slice it and then dice it up. Now you could definitely use pork shoulder. So if you have pulled pork that isn't heavily barbecue seasoned, you could certainly use that instead, or leftover pork loin, leftover pork chops, as long as they're tender. You do want them very tender. And then I just have some plain old deli ham. I think it looks like it's Virginia ham. And I'm just gonna dice that up a little bit. Now you can fry it up first, but I found that didn't really make that much of a difference. But if you wanted to throw it into a frying pan and get a little crispiness on it, you can certainly do that. We're gonna use about 1 to 1.5 ounces of Swiss cheese. Oh, it's already ready. It's ahead of me. That's all right. It'll sit there, it'll be fine. And I'm just gonna grate that up. And the reason why I'm grating it is because I really want that cheese to melt inside of the wrap beautifully. So grating it's gonna help that. All right. If there are big chunks left, don't worry about it. Put it right in the sandwich. All right, let's see, what else do we need? We've got our ham, our Swiss, our pork, we need our pickle. Probably about 1/2 of a pickle, I would say. Maybe even 1/4 of a pickle for each sandwich. And then you also want to dice that up. If you don't have dill pickles, handy, but you have a dill pickle relish, you could certainly use that. That'd be perfectly fine. So these are just chopped into bite-sized pieces. No need to be too worried about anything there. All right, so I'm gonna throw these into little bowls so I can get my cutting board dried off so we can assemble this sandwich, which is super easy and oh my gosh, so delicious. And of course, if you didn't like these fillings, you could do this with all kinds of different fillings. So this same air crisping technique was gonna work for anything. The other day, I read somewhere where somebody air crisped a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Let me just tell you, a peanut butter and jelly wrap, maybe with some bananas in there, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing to me. I'm gonna have to give that one a try. All right, so let me clean up here, get our sandwich assembled, and then we will get it into the indoor grill to air crisp. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is, this is a 10-inch flour tortilla. You could make them smaller, just decrease all of your ingredients because you don't wanna overstuff the sandwich or it'll split. You don't wanna understuff it either. It'll just kind of look unimpressive when you cut it open. So there's a little bit of science, if you will, behind how much filling you use. And I'll kind of go over that as I fill it up. All right, so I'm gonna spread some mustard. And when you're making a sandwich wrap and you want to grill it, or even if you're not going to grill it, you want to keep about 2 inches on each side. Leave them open because that's what you're going to end up wrapping and tucking under. So I really just spread the mustard right here in the middle, like that. All right, that's about a tablespoon. And the mustard that I'm using is a Cuban-style mustard, okay? So we got this at Walmart, but if you can't find it, yellow mustard will be fine, or whatever mustard you like. I've even had a Cuban sandwich that used honey mustard, and it was pretty good. I mean, I prefer regular, but it was pretty good with the honey mustard too. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is get down some cheese, and I'm gonna roll this way, so I'm gonna put about half of the cheese right here, which is about, I don't know, 3 inches from the edge. That looks good. Then I'm gonna put the ham on. I'm not putting the pickles on until after the ham because I want them to have a barrier since they are the most liquid ingredient here. We don't want them to sit on the flour tortilla or it'll get soggy pretty quickly. Then we're gonna put on our pickles and then the pork. Oh my gosh, so amazing. Yes, I just dropped one on the floor. It happens. And then on top of that, I'm going to put the rest of the cheese. So I used about somewhere between 1.5 ounces of each of these ingredients, and that seems to work really well. Now we need to roll it. So we're going to roll it burrito style. So I take this end up, and I use my hands a little bit to kind of keep everything tucked in. And I roll it, I press it down. Okay, and then as I get here and I have all the filling pulled back towards you, you want to make it tight. Otherwise, there's going to be too much area unstuffed, and it looks a little bit weird when you cut it open. All right, then fold in your edges. If you've got any kind of poking out too much, pop it back in there. Fold your edges over, and again, hold it back. Hold both edges and simply roll. Now, one thing that's very important is that you want the seam to be on the underside like this, okay? So wherever the seam is, that is going to be the underside of your wrap, okay? That's really important because if you end up putting it like this and there's this little flap here, it gets really crunchy and it gets really brown and it doesn't adhere to the other part of the wrap. So we definitely want it to go like that and be sitting on the seam. Next, we coat it with butter. And spread the butter evenly in a thin layer on both sides. Now, you could do this, I guess, in the grill, but I think it's easier to do it outside, even though when I turn it over, I'm gonna end up getting butter on my cutting board. I just find it easier to do it here. If you didn't wanna have butter on your cutting board, use a piece of parchment or something like that, and it'll be fine. All right, now we're gonna get here and really spread that butter to kind of help that seam. You could probably even melt your butter if you wanted to, and kind of just use a pastry brush and brush it with butter. That'd be fine. If you didn't want to use butter, but butter is more traditional in a Cuban, I understand, that you butter the bread. But if you didn't want to use butter at all, you could probably just stick with some oil. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna get a little bit under here to kind of seal this really nicely. Looks like our sandwich is ready to go. We are ready to put it into the grill. So I'm gonna go ahead and just grab it, grab the lid, place it seam side down, extremely important, right in the air fryer basket. Go ahead and close the lid. And now we're gonna set the time for 10 minutes and we will flip it in 5. All right, so it's almost been 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and give them a flip, or give it a flip since I only made one. Also, I was looking at this. You could probably, let me see, I'll see if it will work this way. Yeah, you could make you could get 4 sandwiches in here. This is the XL grill. You could easily get 4 in. All right, so now the seam has seamed itself, and now we can flip and go for the rest of the 5 minutes. That is the browning and the crispiness that I like. So feel free, you could go less time, you can go a little more time, no problems whatsoever. But this allowed all the filling to be heated through. So if you wanted a softer wrap, you didn't want to grill it at all, you've got to heat your ingredients first, or you're just going to be eating a cold sandwich. So you'd have to do that. If you wanted it just lightly toasted, I would also warm up the ingredients beforehand. And you could do that pretty easily in like a little skillet. You could just mix them all together and then put the cheese on top and heat it up for a few minutes and then put a lid on it till it's melted, transfer it over, and then roll it into your wrap, and that would be delicious as well. All right, there we go. We're all done. And it should be perfect, and it looks pretty perfect to me. Look at that. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So like I said, you could do probably 4 of them at a time. And if you were doing them for more people, you needed more of them, you can do them in batches. Let them sit here on a cooling rack. You never want to put anything that's crunchy, crispy, breaded onto a flat surface, because what happens is the steam is trapped from the heat that's coming off of the food onto the flat surface, and then it gets soggy there. So whenever you're going to let something rest that you want to keep really nice and crunchy, put it onto a cooling rack. All right, I'm going to give that about 5 minutes just to cool down, and then we're going to cut it and taste it. And oh, I can't wait. It's so delicious. Wow, look at that. The ooey gooey cheese, the crunchy flour tortilla, all those flavors. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to taste this. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on a plate. Oh my gosh, I've already eaten a couple of them because we've tested the recipe, obviously. And oh, they're so, so good. Look at that. And beautiful. Like, I think these are great. So if you want an easier way to make a Cuban and you can't find the Cuban bread, or you don't have any bread or whatever, but you've got flour tortillas, make it this way. Super delicious. Oh my gosh, I hope it's not too hot. It's hot. But perfect. Oh my goodness. This is unbelievably delicious. I mean, all the flavors are there. You get the little bit of spiciness from the rub on that pork, which I hope you try. You get the dill from the dill pickle. Oh, it's just so good. And the ooey gooey cheese, I absolutely love it. But listen, if these ingredients are not your cup of tea, don't worry about it. You can still make a delicious wrap. Just fill it with whatever you want. Remember, the quantities matter. You want to get the perfect amount of filling without overdoing it or underdoing it. 375 degrees in the air fryer, and you should be perfectly fine no matter what fillings you have. If you want to go less time, you don't want as much crunch, remember, heat your filling up beforehand. You know what I was just thinking? This would be really good as a Reuben wrap. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to try that. That is gonna be absolutely delicious. So as always, make it yours, make it delicious, and keep it real.